Hi, it's Alexander Ewald and this is my SuperBooth 2020 recap video. SuperBooth 2020 was exceptional. The atmosphere was great, there were more than 6,000 people, I met lots of old and new friends and had amazing conversations with other musicians and gear manufacturers, and of course got to check out lots of new gear. In this video I want to share my experience with you and talk about some of my favorite instruments from this year's show. One of my personal highlights was Play, the new sample and MIDI-based groovebox by Polyend. Co-founder Piotr gave me a walkthrough.
You've got 8 tracks and up to 64 steps of audio, and then when it's purple you've got also 8 tracks and 64 steps of MIDI. For the beat I will use this function we call fill. If I don't like it I can just do it once again. Maybe I'll go for some breakbeat. Or house. Yeah, that's cool. Hit fill once again and it will randomly pick the sounds of kick, hi-hat and snares. Do different types of randomization. Adds randomly a little bit of reverb, delay, and just puts a panorama information across all of the steps. And then I will record some automation. And just like quick copy those. So now I have like 4 different patterns. I'll go to another one, select all, and change the notes, add a little bit of cutoff, switch some samples. So now I have like 4 different patterns. It can be chained together and then it loops. I can have up to 16 variations of each track. So this is my first variation, this is the second variation. A little bit different kicks. The performance mode allows you to do changes on the fly. If I like screw it up, I can go to my previous state. We believe that people should have fun making music, either if they are very knowledgeable about music or not, they should have fun, and our technology allows for that.
Play seems like an interesting idea spawner to me. With the automation, generation, and randomization features, you can quickly create interesting patterns and sequences that you would have likely not come up with otherwise. One of the biggest highlights for many SuperBooth 2020 visitors for sure was the Oberheim OB-X8. Tom Oberheim had announced his new collaboration with Sequential shortly before the show, so many attendees took the opportunity to try the instrument for the first time and perhaps have a little chat with Dave Smith, who was hanging out at the booth most of the time. Andy from Sequential gave me a quick tour of the OB-X8.
The main instruments from Oberheim that people know from the early days are the OB-X, the OB-X8, and the OB-8. And what we've been able to pull off with this instrument is a combination of all of them in one package, plus some additional features. We have the SEM-based low-pass filter from the OB-X, and then we also have the Curtis-based 2-pole and 4-pole filters, which were present in the OB-X8 and the OB-8. We also have recreated everything from page 2 within the OB-8. So there's a lot of capability, a lot of functionality under the hood that's not apparent only from the front panel.
And then Andy continued to give me the most amazing audio demo of this great synthesizer, but due to a technical issue with an audio adapter, the quality of the recording is terrible and doesn't do the synth justice, so I won't show it to you. Fortunately, I had a couple of minutes with the instrument myself, so here's some random noodling with the OB-X8. Of course, a couple of minutes are not enough to form an educated opinion, but at first sight, I am pretty amazed by this instrument. I almost instantly clicked with it. I felt right at home with the interface, the build quality is amazing, and sound-wise, it really gave me goosebumps. Greek synth gods Dreadbox announced 3 new DIY modules that work in both Eurorack and standalone. Dreadbox founder Yannis gave me the tour.
We are here with 3 new DIY kits. The first Hades version, the best Erebus version we ever had out. We also have a third DIY kit, it's Dysmetria. It's a synthesizer with a sequencer, but the synth voice is more focused on making percussion sounds. It's a synth voice with 2 oscillators, a noise generator, a filter which is 12 dB, and it has 2 modes, a bandpass or a low pass. Most of these things are voltage controlled, and you can send the sequencer to change parameters per step. This is the first step. You edit the pitch, velocity, accents, and you add the triplets or 4 hits if you like. Press next, edit next step. Same goes here. Here the same. And you can just press both buttons and say this is the last step. Now we have 4 steps recorded. I could just go live on the live rec mode and start saying stuff, and it happens.
I have lately developed an interest in percussion synths like the Syncussion or DFAM or Nord 2, and I really like seeing more developers tapping into this water. And Erebus, of course, is a modern classic, so if you don't have one of its versions in your setup yet, this might be a great chance to grab one. Speaking of modern classics, a man that is on a streak of creating them is Vlad Kreimer of SOMA Labs. At SuperBooth, he presented his latest instrument, Terra.
So it's not just a box with knobs, but it's instrument that you can learn how to play and then play with a very big range of different timbres and sound extractions right on your fingertips. So you don't need to tweak any knobs. So you have this area for instant playing. This triangle is modification, 64 variations of each sound. And the rest is just your instant performance. This is why one of the reasons why so simple interface. Because it's supposed to be that timbres will be played but not adjusted like usually we do, right? So we spend big time in studio to create some timbre and then we just play it. So here you play on timbre instantly during the performance. So you see, this is just one sound, just one engine. So here will be 32 different engines, so no presets.
Playtronica brought the final prototype of their turntable color sequencer Orbita. Sasha gave me a tour.
We in Playtronica really wanted to play with colors, so we created a magnetized plate where you can put different buttons like this with different colors, and each of them will represent a note. Each of the circle representing different octaves. So this is the lowest octave, this is the bass. Now I'm going with a melody.
According to Sasha, the Kickstarter campaign for Orbita will finally launch in a couple of weeks. Build quality-wise, I found the prototype still a bit rough around the edges, but if they get the quality right on the final product, I think this is going to be a really fun tool and perhaps also educational. I can see myself jamming on this with my little nieces and nephews. I'm sure we're gonna have a lot of fun with it. Something else I was happy to see in the wild was the new version of the metallic resonator by Eonwave. It's a metal gong that's mounted in a cabinet and driven by a resonator that is powered by an amplifier. It was originally invented by Maurice Martineau as one of 3 speakers for his electronic instrument, the Onde Martineau. Eonwave have built 2 versions of this before. It was off the market for a couple of years and now it's available again in a very beautiful new edition. And while we're at the electroacoustic side of things, German developer Leaf Audio presented the 3rd generation of their microphonic soundbox. New additions to this include an improved amplifier and an envelope generator that you can use to trigger Eurorack systems. In addition to the microphonic soundbox, Leaf Audio announced a sort of side card, the microphonic playground, which is passive. It doesn't have its own amplifier, but you can connect it to the amp input of the microphonic soundbox to play them together. Another thing they're working on is this budget-friendly DIY wooden Eurorack case, which has a smart lid that doubles as a stand.
Der Deckel, der sitzt hier drauf und dann hast du hier einen kleinen, cleveren Verschlussmechanismus.
Create Audio presented their collaboration with Pittsburgh Modular. Eastbeast is a budget-friendly semi-modular desktop synth.
You have a single oscillator running into the Pittsburgh filter, so you have that warm, buttery sound, all controlled with an analog envelope through our VCA. Now all these circuits are sort of evolutions of what we did with the SV1, which was our most popular instrument, so this is another way for more people to get into it. This comes with a 1-octave touch keyboard, but you have octave up and octave down, so you can get quite a bit more range out of it. It produces MIDI with the keyboard. It also takes MIDI in, so you can play, if you want to play with a larger MIDI keyboard or with your DAW, you absolutely can. Built-in sequencer, built-in arpeggiator, lots of options for waveforms. It really comes down to the sound of this thing. It's absolutely huge and yeah. And then in addition to the the core analogness of it, because we're controlling the back end sort of digital switching and routing stuff around, we can do stuff like we have a waveform that's, we call it pitched noise, but what we're really doing is switching the waveform really, really quickly. Give us a nice, cool pitched noise out of it. We also have the different waveforms. You can have low bandpass and high, but you can have different versions. You can have multiple. So this is a notch filter then, and we have high and bandpass, back to our low pass, and you have band, high, low, and band. So there's a lot of options with the filter. This is modular as well, so with the patch bay, you have all the ins and all the outs you would need to sort of connect this to either other standalone boxes or a full Eurorack modular. Each section can be operated completely standalone. So what I mean by that is you have all the ins and the outs to use the envelope here, and all the filter ins and outs to use it with something else over here. So as you grow your system, you don't outgrow this because you can just use bits and pieces here and there. It becomes a part of a larger system.
Now, Eastbeast is a fairly simple and straightforward synth, and it sounds gorgeous. And as we just learned at NAMM, it's not the only of its kind. Create Audio have announced a sibling, the West Pest. Something I was personally quite excited to see at the show was the latest prototype of the SFC-8, a MIDI controller for Jupiter 8 style plugins by SoundForce.
This is designed primarily as a control surface for Jupiter 8 style plugins, such as the Jupiter 8, the Jup V8, and also the Tau plugin. But it will also have the possibility to save different configurations if you want to use this controller with another rack hardware synth, or for example the Roland Jupiter Boutique and things like this. This will have 4 slots of memory when you can save the configuration for the Arturia plugin, the configuration for the Tau plugin, etc. There's also 5 banks of 4 presets, so if you would like to save some presets into the controller, that's also possible. All the switches are now a digital combination of a tactile switch and an LED. And this is with hope that I can also get information from the plugins in order to update the interface when presets are changed. This is not yet implemented because this needs to come from Arturia and other makers, but this is at least a technical possibility on the plugin. The main advantages of this is that it's fun to use. You don't have to look at your screen, you don't use your mouse. And it actually helped me to understand also the layout of the synthesizer and how things are pre-routed together much better. Because when you look at the physical thing and you change it, in real time it does change, and you realize, okay, the PWM is coming from this envelope or the LFO, and here's the amount. So it's actually also on educational purposes, it really works well, and you really understand what you're doing much better. Because previously I used VSTIs for a long time and I was just going through presets and this sounds good, I will keep this. But I never really understood, okay, how this synthesizer is working. And
something else that made me really happy was seeing the final prototype of the RE-808 case by Comptronic. The RE-808 by DINSync is a DIY kit that enables you to build a more or less exact replica of the Roland TR-808 drum box, which is actually so exact that you can use most parts as replacement parts for the real vintage instrument. The RE-808 kit has been out for a while now, but what was still missing to build the whole thing together was the case. And Comptronics are now about to launch that case, so if you're in the process of building your RE-808, you can now finish it. And if you're not good at soldering and decide to let a trusted builder like Comptronics or Klanggenerator build this for you, that's going to be possible soon as well, thanks to this case hitting the market. Paul from DINSync gave me a nice demo of the RE-808 and the 909, which has been out for a while now. I'm not sure if this comes across in the video, but I have to say, in person, these drum machines sound incredibly good. Like even without any compression, EQing, or other processing, right out the box, they sound so present and punchy, like modern drum machines rarely do. I love it. And finally, something I more like stumbled upon by accident, but was pretty delighted to learn about, was Misha, a new Eurorack sequencer by Eventide.
Everything is based off of intervals, so you can play your intervals and then you can make sequences with the intervals. You can pick a key and a scale, so we could start with something like C major, and when I press +1, we'll cycle through the scale in intervals of 1. But if I press +2, now we're going to jump by 2 intervals. So you can create interesting patterns by changing the way we cycle through the intervals. So if I do -3 +2, we can get a cool little motif going, right? If I like that idea, but I want to play it in a different key, I can just change the key here. And so now I could play in E flat. And if you were to play that on a piano, you would have to change the way, the pattern you're playing and learn that again. But with this, I could just play that same pattern. And now I'm in a different key, but I'm playing the same pattern. Now, if I like that pattern, but I want to hear it in a different scale, I can just change my scale, so I can try something like melodic minor. So it's really easy to cycle through scales and keys and create new ideas. And then, you know, if you like your idea, but you want to change it up a little bit, you can try a new scale and you get different sort of voicings.
Those were my personal highlights of SuperBooth 2020, at least the things that I managed to check out. Of course, I couldn't cover everything, there was much more, and I simply missed some things that, in hindsight, I wish I checked out when I was there. Bastel presented their new module Pizza, Erica Synths brought the second version of their Syntrax, AJH Synth presented a new burst envelope module for their Minimod series, and Korg brought their new NTS2 DIY oscilloscope that you can buy bundled with a new patch and tweak book. But as I said in the beginning of the video, the real highlight for me were the people. Something that amazes me about SuperBooth is how there's room for every type of electronic music and subculture attached to it. Ambient hippies, techno punks, score composers, DIY freaks and modular nerds. All united by their mutual fascination for little electronic boxes with knobs and faders that bleep and bloop. It's a beautiful thing, and if you haven't been there yet, try to come next year. That was my SuperBooth 2020 recap. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.